Dominic, welcome to a new era in America.
Oh boy. Hey, Jenna.
I
It's
would say, "Hey, how you doing?" But really,
uh,
it's a new
it's a
era.
new era.
It is
Oh,
actually, it
that it
really
is.
is. It really, really is. Um, and just to, yeah, there's so many things that were brand new about it, but also I got to see it, so we got some stuff to talk about.
Can't wait to hear it.
All right, cool. Let's start the show. Hi, I'm Jenna,
And I'm Dom, and we're both award-winning journalists.
who've recently been laid off.
Our industry is experiencing a seismic shift, and it's shed a lot of really good journalists.
So where does that leave us? Well, we're definitely laid off.
And we're looking for new jobs, looking for what's left of the industry, and what to do next.
And we're looking at all of it. So if you're a fellow laid off journalist, a working journalist, or someone who admires the craft, we're looking to build community.
Develop new skills, and try to figure out what just happened.
Welcome to Laid Off and Looking. Okay, so lots to talk about. It's been a big week in America.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
been I've been honestly trying not to watch it personally. It's been a lot to take in. So
It's been a lot to take in. A lot has happened in a short amount of time. And
mhm.
I would say, speaking from a journalistic standpoint, this is one of those places where it becomes difficult to walk the line because so many people have pointed out one of the important things that should have been learned from the last go round with this was that to manage your mental health, you cannot pay attention to every single outrage.
Exactly.
That's just not healthy. However, for people who work in the field, and maybe it just comes down to like you just focus on whatever your beat is or whatever, but it does become a challenging thing to not be aware of everything that's happening. But I think I'm going to have to focus on learning how not to react, let's say.
I think, yes, listen, for a lot of the people who work the day to day in terms of, especially if, politics is
Oh
their beat,
yeah.
DC is their beat. If you're a broadcast journalist on one of the cable networks, that's certainly going to be very difficult to avoid completely. But, I think you do have to learn to compartmentalize these things and how do you see it? I think that's going to be really important and also I am very curious how much the public wants to hear because wanting to be informed is one thing. I think swimming in this, you know, there's like
Every
a
single
different
outrage, yeah.
headline. There's a different headline coming out, multiple times in a day, 5 to 10 headlines in a day. It's like it's too much for people to really absorb.
I think the constant barrage of breaking news, the constant barrage, yeah, like you're saying, of the headlines, clickbait, all of that stuff is it's gonna wear people out. But one of the things that I also thought was interesting, speaking of, people working in broadcast who have to deal with this day in, day out, is that CNN, one of the originators of I think they were the originator of the 24-hour news channel, like back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Right? That sounds
Hmm.
right. Okay.
Sure.
Anyway, yeah, they literally just announced this morning, right before we started recording on Thursday, that they're going to eliminate 200 of their broadcast jobs from their traditional TV operations, and eventually, because it's kind of squishy as to exactly when, but they're going to be hiring 200 people to work in new digital roles like data scientist and project engineer. I don't product, excuse me, engineer. I don't know exactly what that means. But there's no indication that the people getting fired are going to be like it's just going to be a transition to a new job. It sounds
Right.
like so you did TV and that was fun for like the past 40 years, but deuces, and now they're going to start hiring new people. And what exactly that looks like, I don't know, but I just thought it was so interesting because it speaks to the shifting trend of where audience attention is. And it's just not in traditional media, especially
Well,
broadcast cable.
can I ask what media is it? Real? I mean, other than we know we keep talking about digital, but I know NBC News said they might be laying off some people, not as many as CNN, but that's what was mentioned too. And um, the Washington Post also might be laying off some people. Um, I mean, what? is everybody in the digital space? Because I'm
I
very
think
curious
so,
to see
yeah.
it, but then I'm very curious to see where that translates and how it translates. And I guess that's what CNN is trying to do. I also know they're going to be changing their lineup also. They're
Well, I
switching
was
that around too.
yes, I was going to say I think that also fits into the larger nobody knows zone, which is not at all disconcerting, but that's kind of where everything is. No, seriously, nobody knows exactly what that's going to look like. We are all moving into uncharted territory,
Hmm.
metaphorically and literally.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
And even when you look at the social media landscape that they're moving to, nobody really knows 100% what that looks like either at this point.
Oh my
I mean, when you
God.
think about it, TikTok is, yes, it's still around, but
For
we're
now,
not
by
sure
the way,
for now.
because there's still people in Congress who still want to see it completely banned unless that sale is forced. And that means that I've now learned that means the majority of the shares have to be sold to an American. And let's just say the first buddy is first in line to be like, I'll buy it.
But so many people have also left TikTok and gone out and explored other places too.
Yep.
I know the TikTok app is not available as of now on Google and it's not available on
It's
Apple
not, yeah, it's
because
not in the App Store.
so it's just people who are actually part of who, if you already have it, then you're still on it. But I guess there's just still a lot of questions in that world too. There are a lot of questions about Facebook and Instagram. We've had conversations. I know other people have had conversations about how comfortable they feel like using Facebook and Instagram now. Um, Twitter has been, Twitter/X has been up. It seems like there's so many more platforms that are out there that it's become there it's so all over the place that it makes you kind of wonder what will be the hub
Well,
of
I
all of
think
these.
that again, that's the other thing is that like, 'cause I had this conversation with somebody and I was just like, I think the thing is that we don't know yet. We don't know what
Hmm.
the hub is. We don't know what the next quote unquote TikTok is going to be. Maybe that app exists and nobody's discovered it yet. Maybe it
Hmm.
hasn't. They're still finishing building it out. I don't know, but um, it does make it hard for people who run small businesses to figure
Yeah.
out which is a good place to put your time, energy, and effort. Um, and yeah, how does that sit with you legally, morally, ethically, all not legally maybe, but definitely morally and ethically, et cetera, because at the end of the day, your communications is being put through somebody else's business. And so their business decisions have nothing to do with what you're doing. But you
Well,
still need them.
I think that's the thing. And of course, like Facebook and Instagram are still huge. And, but I do think there are people who are questioning looking at Mark Zuckerberg's moves over the past, few
Yeah, that whole nine hundred thousand
months.
dollar watch nonsense with the Jerry curl and the chain and the rapper, just what, dude? No, no, no. And the rolling back of the DEI, which I understand everybody's doing, and the whole we're not doing fact checking anymore. There's a lot of problems, a
And
lot of problems.
all of them being at the inauguration, all the, these billionaire, tech people being at the inauguration, just definitely, I think, has set some people to start thinking about where they want to put their platforms and how they want to communicate. And I don't know if that means that listen, I doubt that it's all just people are going to pull out now, but I do think if they start seeing new platforms come up that maybe align more with their belief
I will
system or
say
with their
so far
ideas.
that I've seen that happen on Blue Sky, which by the way, I'm on
Yeah.
Blue Sky. And we haven't quite gotten the podcast onto Blue Sky yet, but that could very well happen because Twitter was not the vibe at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
No, no. But that's the thing is like I think a lot of people are just, that's an interesting question that's coming up about where do people, and I think that's what's going to be interesting about CNN, and a lot of these other platform, about these other news organizations. Where are you developing it? I know there have been talk of, I guess they're trying to do it like CNN Plus, and it would be on multiple platforms as opposed to just one of what they were trying to do before,
Yeah,
where you
but
had to
didn't they
just pay.
want us to subscribe to their thing?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
I don't know
also
if they're
don't know
doing
if
that.
the public is really feeling that vibe. Like, anyway, because so
Yeah.
much content comes to you for free now, via, again, we've become addicted to what your Zuckerbergs and some of these other, app creators for social media have created. We are accustomed to content coming to us for free. So subscribe to
Hmm.
something. I mean, you do have, I guess, like, what is it? Patreon and all this other stuff, but
Hmm.
well, yeah, the underlying point is I don't know, and I don't think anybody really knows.
Well, I mean, speaking of the whole, when I was mentioning about the techies being at the inauguration, interesting because somebody else I know was at the inauguration.
Yes, indeed, I bore witness to that. And yeah, without getting too deep into the details, because I was not there in a journalistic fashion. I was more there as a producer. Um, to make sure that everything was properly captured on video, et cetera, for like official purposes, Library of Congress, that type of stuff. um it was weird. I gotta be honest. It was, first of all, it was weird to be at an event that big and not be there as a journalist. That really, like, I had to fight a lot of my instincts, as to, like, oh my God, go over, all of my instincts I kind of had to fight against because, again, we're recording for posterity, not, to get a good story.
Right, right.
And then secondly, also, yeah, there was a lot of stuff that definitely I noted. And having all of those billionaires who effectively control not only the way that we communicate with each other, but the news that we're able to get, that was very, very concerning because there definitely seemed to be a absolute clear understanding that flattering our new president is going to be a big priority, at least for them. And how does that affect the platforms that they run? And what does that mean for information and sharing information for the rest of us? That's where this nightmare starts.
Yeah.
But
All very legit concerns,
yeah.
you know?
Well, with that in mind, though, because I'm not a photojournalist, and even though we both work with videographers and photojournalists, they are I think the unrecognized first
Hmm.
responders, because, as our next guest pointed out, sometimes or frequently they can be at the scene of an event or, unfortunately, a crime even before the police or the ambulance gets there. So, um, yeah, let's learn more about what it takes and what it means to be a photojournalist. All right, so this episode of the podcast, we're doing it a little bit more impromptu. It's a long story, but Dom and I dragged our feet and forgot to write a one sheet. So, with that, though, because we pre-interview all of our guests, I want to introduce Todd Maisel. And Todd has been a longtime photographer at the New York Daily News. He was also with AM New York. Is that correct, Todd?
Correct. Correct.
Perfect. And so one of the things that we wanted to explore is that, journalism isn't just the written word, and it's not just the, nonsense blather that comes out of a broadcaster's mouth. It's also the visual aspects of telling a story. And we couldn't think of anyone better that spent decades pounding the pavement on the streets of New York than Todd. So Todd, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right. So first of all, I guess what, like, when you were definitely out there like hustling and working and everything else like that, and you basically, like, you grab your camera and your gear and you head out into the street, do you have any sense of exactly what the assignment is, or is it very much like, I worry that sometimes people might think that your job is just like, oh, you just point and click and shoot. There's a lot more to it, right?
Oh, yes. I mean, the spot news is always a surprise. It's never something that's the same. It's always something different, different nuances. Um, Other than that, if you're doing protests and going to a press conference, okay, you know what's going to happen, or you have an idea of what's going to happen. In spot news, it's always different. It could be a fire. The fire could be fatal. There was one this morning in Brooklyn, in Brighton Beach, that was fatal, and I would have been there if I was working, but I was not working. Um, Everything is it's always different, and getting to it is its own experience. For me, it's always been the thrill of the chase, and I thrived on that. It was in I'm an adrenaline junkie, so getting out there and running to that job, getting there with without any real care about how you do it, just get it. That was what it was. It's changed a lot in the last couple of years, especially with red light cameras and speed cameras. So it's no more running; it's like a chess game. And so the art of chasing has changed a lot.
Todd, I remember on your website you had something about that you're, if I remember correct, a proud enemy of the people. Curious what you meant by that.
Well, that was something Donald Trump put out there. And it's funny that a lot of Democrats have adopted this. And so it's an across the board thing. Protesters adopted this. People on the left and the right have adopted this. And so my final year as breaking news editor in 2020, I was the enemy. I was absolutely the enemy. The protesters on the street treated me badly. I was assaulted. They attempted to rob me. Uh, when they had Occupy City Hall, I was nearly robbed. I had to go back there the next day with some of my friends and set them straight. And after that, they didn't bother me anymore because they knew it was going to come. But
Oh my God.
yeah, well, I'm from Brooklyn. I
Mhm.
settle things with a baseball bat. So if that's what they want to do, I told them, I said, you can go complain to your friends in blue across the street there. I'm sure they're gonna give you half a look. So uh, this is the kind of thing that we dealt with all the
Is
time.
that because people didn't want their picture being taken while they were at outside on a public street at a protest?
Yeah, their First Amendment rights were not as important as mine. And I resent that. If you're in a public place, you have no expectation of privacy. You just don't. And I pointed out to them that all the cameras above you are taking your picture every single minute of the day. And so, what is my pictures going to do? If you ask me nicely, please don't take my picture. I will respect that. But that's not how it was going. And there's pictures of me being assaulted and it's happened. It's just that the the all the people have adopted this thing that the press is somehow the enemy, and I don't really understand it because we're just messenger.
Has it always been like that though, Todd? Or have you noticed a shift over the past few years?
It's been a shift, and especially a shift since Donald Trump coined it, and it's become a big problem for us in the field. I found it to be a real big problem. People who I thought were my friends were not my friends. I was very friendly with the Jewish community. I'm Jewish myself, and I was attacked in a protest of Hasidim, and I had to seek the police to help me before they beat the crap out of me. This is really bad. I was getting up there in the age. I'm not going to get myself hurt at this time. Uh, and that's what was going on. And we were a target. I mean, okay, in the beginning of my career, yeah, there was the criminals
Hmm.
would try to target me. I've had a TV thrown out a window from like the 10th floor. I've had shots fired and one bullet hit my door once, but that was back in the 80s. That was the Wild West back then. Now, all of a sudden, I'm the enemy simply because I'm the messenger.
Wow. All right. So then one of the things that I'm also wondering here is how conspicuous does your part of being in the press make you? Because, for example, if you're like, say, and I'm assuming here because I've never been a print reporter, but if you're a print reporter, you could probably just like you've got your pad and your pen or whatever on you, but you can blend in with the crowd. Like I know working in broadcasting, between having your recorder and your mic out, that makes you pretty obvious. What kind of gear were you on an average shoot lugging with you out into the field to, first of all, make it so very clear that you were press, and then B, just like how much expensive stuff are you carrying with you all over the city?
Yeah, I mean, look, I was carrying two SLR cameras with expensive lenses and police radio and extra gear in my pockets. Yeah, it could be 20, 30 pounds of equipment at any time.
That takes a toll on your body, though, because all the
Oh,
cameramen I
yeah.
know have
I
bad
mean, I
backs.
couldn't, I simply couldn't keep up marching a 10-mile march with protesters anymore. It just wasn't in me. I couldn't do it. And to me, it was, I should hand this off to the younger people and let them do this. And that's what I did. I mentored quite a number of people, young photographers who are out there. Hoyt Mitchell, Dean Moses, who's now my the new breaking news editor. They're great. They followed a lot of my example. I'm very proud of that, and I'm proud of them because they're working hard and doing some great work. And that's what we need to continue to do, despite being the enemy of the people.
Despite being the enemy of the people.
Yeah.
Dom, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say, I'm also curious though, when you're somebody walking into a situation, whether it's, where you're not welcome. Earlier you talked about, I know recently that vibe has changed, but even let's go back further when you first started out and you were going out there as a journalist. How does it feel when you're approaching a situation where, you might not be welcome? Like being part of the press could almost be like people just don't want to see anybody. How does it, what kind of toll does that take on you when like I'm walking into something right now where people might not want to see me, but I have to still do my part of the job to document this?
Let's go back to 1984. I ran on a job that was, and I was very close, a crash involving a military escort. They were hauling fuel and vehicles, and a drunk driver crossed the lane and smashed into their vehicle, overturned, and there was at least one person killed. I pull up on the job, I pull out my camera, I take a couple of frames, and I have two soldiers run up to me. One puts a 9mm to my head and says, "You effing take another picture. I'm going to blow your effing head off."
Over a
Good.
picture?
Over a picture. Okay. Cops ran over. They were like, "Oh my God, oh my God." And they saved me from these soldiers that were just off the wall. They took my press card as though I did something wrong, which I said I would leave. You don't need to take my press card. I'm not going to fight with these guys, but they still took my press card. And then when I had to get the press card back, and I went down to police headquarters, they treated me like a criminal. I was flabbergasted by that I had done something wrong. No, I just was doing my job, and I was more than willing to back off and get away from the scene. I wasn't going to deal with these guys fully armed. No way. And that's not the first time that I've had situations. I once came up on the driver of John Gotti, who was shot at his house, and I showed up there, and I'm ready to take some pictures, and some of his boys came over to me and said, "You're not going to take any pictures because I'm going to beat your brains in." I said, "Guys, I'm going to leave." I was
Oh my
smart enough to
God.
do that. And it's not the first time with the mob that it's happened. It
Mhm.
happened on Mulberry Street when I was much younger. And I wasn't pressed yet. And I took a picture of these two guys sitting on a bench, and they just look like cartoon characters. I took their picture and I started walking away, and I realized a couple of guys were following me. I knew what was going on. It was right in front of the mob headquarters over there. I went to my camera, I took the film out, and I handed it to the guy. And he says, "Smart boy."
Oh my. Okay, first of all, that is the darkest version of It Happened on Mulberry Street that I've ever heard in my
Yeah, yeah.
life.
Well, it
Not
was,
quite a kid's book, but very much a New York story. It
yeah.
happened on
Well,
Mulberry
I'm
Street.
street smart that way, so I see it coming. There's times when you want to put up a fight, and then there are times when it's time to surrender.
Well, I also feel like with photojournalists, there's a bigger target on you because you can't conceal that you have a camera and you're taking pictures. Sometimes the person taking a reporter who's there with the taking notes can sort of blend in and have a better chance of dealing with those
Yeah.
situations. But you stand out and
Oh
people
yeah.
will see you. And that sometimes is what to me is like you kind of are the one who can attract all the attention of, oh, there's somebody here and they're taking pictures. And I don't want you to see what I'm doing or I don't want you to see what's happening.
I remember on 9/11 anniversary, it was 2020, 2019, and they had the presidential candidates there. They had Mike Pence was there, Biden was there, Hillary and Clinton, uh, Bill Clinton, and they had us up on a stand, and you couldn't see them because there were too many people in the way. I put my SLRs down, took out my cell phone camera, I walked down there, and I made the picture. And they were so pissed off at me, but I couldn't care less.
Hmm.
I made the picture. I made the picture I needed, and that's it. And that's what I'm here for. I'm here to make
Hmm.
the picture, and I'll play every trick in the book to do it.
Hmm.
Is there a difference with, I mean, now that the technology with, iPhones has gotten so good, I guess, is there a difference with the quality of picture that you're able to take, or could you have done your job if you had an iPhone as well as you could with the SLR cameras that you were lugging around?
When I go out these days, and I don't do it often anymore, I work part time. Uh, I will go out with one camera, not two anymore, and my cell phone. My cell phone can take those close-ups just fine, and it takes that wide angle shot. The 15 Pro is an amazing phone, amazing camera. So I don't take the camera with me. Why weigh myself down? But I do know that with my long lens, I'm going to get a much better picture always, and faster and quicker, and I'm much faster with that. So yeah, things have changed.
Oh.
And what had happened in my last year in 2018 at the Daily News was the reporters were taking pictures with their cell phones, and so the close-up stuff they were getting, I was getting. Why'd they have to pay me? My pictures were 10 times better, of course. They were taking snapshots. It's very different. Very different.
Okay, but see, this is the thing that I want to follow up on because I've been noticing, myself being in my position, when I look at jobs, a lot of people are looking for, we need you to be a reporter and a photographer and a videographer and an editor. And it's just like, hold on, wait a second. These are like four different jobs, four
That's
different skill
right.
sets. Like I can touch on some of the other ones, but I'm not a professional.
It's about quantity versus quality. And sometimes the job requires quality. And so if I covered the World Trade Center 9/11 anniversary, I would just take pictures. I wouldn't do the story. I would say, I need a reporter for this. But then there were jobs where I I would do it differently. I was always one to take video, always one to take stills and write the story. That's why I was the breaking news editor, because I could do all those things. And I always urge the younger people, learn them all. Learn to write. Learn to know where your apostrophes go. I mean, God, I've seen some terrible writing by photographers, and that unless you're really good in this business, you're not going to make it if you can't write and you can't take video. So I've always taken video. I was one of the first people at the Daily News to start doing video, and that was because I showed up at a big job where there was an overturned tanker, and it was on fire. And what did I do? I had a small camera, a small SLR, and I was taking video with that, and I would interview people with that. And when they saw what I had done on this small camera, they wanted to train me to use a bigger camera, and that was fine. Everybody else started learning how to do video. That was, early 2000s. I'd say 2005. We started. The rest of the staff started doing video, but that's what the job is these days. You
Oh
have to
yeah.
know it all. You
But do
know.
you notice the loss in the quality of the work, though? Is there a loss in the quality of the work with that? Because I mean, I think it's great people knowing sometimes the basics of a lot of things, but when you really want someone who like, is there something that it almost hurts a bit up in the field that the
To
job
build
almost
on,
becomes
I think what Dominic's saying, sorry, Dom, but I'm
no,
just saying that like I've had experiences where I've been in the field and I've taken video or something like that, but then I've worked with a professional photog, and I'm
and
sorry, the packages the two of us produce are, I don't want to say it's night and day, but the quality and the understanding of like a visual narrative is so very different. Then I'm just like, yeah, we should definitely use his work or her
and it,
work. I've always worked with guy photogs.
but in that same way though, that means a lot of photojournalist jobs then all of a sudden get you know, are lost because now there's not that also that appreciation of what that job is and what it means for the people who do that job.
Right. Yeah. I would say that there is a loss of quality. I've frequently compared my work with my my colleague in the field, Paul Martinka, who sometimes will go out there and shoot video, but also sometimes they just want him to take pictures. And yeah, his work is going to be better if I'm doing everything.
Hmm.
And what I do with the camera is instead of taking notes, I'll turn the camera on to video and I'll do my interview that way so that all of it is on one camera. Or I do it on a cell phone. But yeah, there is definitely a loss of quality if you're trying to do everything. You forget some of the elements that you need to take because you're just so uh,
Overstimulated. That's happened to me so
overstimulate,
many
yeah,
times.
overstimulate is a good word, about what you're needing to get. And you're worried about getting the proper interviews instead of taking the picture
Hmm.
that needs to tell the story.
Hmm.
And for me, sometimes it's one or two pictures that are the crucial pictures, and you've got to make sure you get those.
Hmm. You've shared some of your pictures with us, Todd. Sorry, and it's there are some of those moments that you have were iconic moments, like looking at 9/11,
Right.
seeing you down there, and of course seeing the devastation of Sandy. Um, you've also been to in war zones. What's it like when you're in a situation like that where you have to get the job done, and at the same point you're seeing this devastation around you? Like I always wonder what I mean. I've been in the field a few times myself in those types of situations, but I'm very curious when you do this for years on end, always out there. What kind of toll does that take when you're there, have to get the job done, and then you see this all? When does it all, like, when do you decompress from it? When do you realize what happened? What's it like when you're there in the moment?
When I'm there in the moment, well, I'll tell you, it's rare for me to lose focus. I think uh, that really happened on 9/11 for me, where I just kind of lost it. Um, but I recover. I recover.
Hmm.
I understand what it is that I need to get done here, and I get myself back into gear. Um, Especially 9/11, where after taking the pictures and working really hard trying to save people, And then once it calms down a bit, I just kind of stopped and met one of my fellow photographers. I sat down on a step uh, and I just cried. That's not me. That's not what I normally do. But what I understood about it was why am I alive? And all these heroes, many of whom I knew very well, why are they dead? And it dawned on me. It dawned on me that I'm alive because it's not an accident that I'm alive. It's for me, it was divine providence. It
Hmm.
was something that came from above.
Hmm.
And so my job became that much more important because if I was spared for a reason. And therefore, the work that I'm doing has a real importance. And that was it for me. The whole my whole outlook and the way I approach things changed a lot after 9/11. And I was a man on a mission.
Hmm.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean, just the weight of bearing witness.
That's it. The weight of bearing witness was strong. And when you're essentially writing the next testament, if you think about it that way, it becomes so important that you get it right. You have it be accurate. Um, Look, I'm writing a book right now, and it's taken me a long time to put it together because I'm fact checking constantly and going back and forth. And I kept very good records, and I have all the pictures, so I'm able to add color to it. So I know what went on. People videotape me doing the job.
I want to pivot though to specifically some of the photos that you took, because you sent us a great cache of work that you've done over the years. And one of them that kind of struck me is this man who it appears to be a man's leg on what looks like a gurney with EMS workers about to take him perhaps into an ambulance. And it's almost as if you can feel the emotion of that moment.
Yeah, is that the one with the woman next to him?
Yes, she looks like she's, either crying or worried about, I mean, obviously if someone's on a gurney, there's got to be an emergency happening, but it okay, I've heard that people you overuse this word, but it's got a real narrative to it. It's not just like a point and click shot. Like this photograph has a narration to it, and whatever story that it would have went with, this feels like the perfect illustration of that moment.
Let me tell you a little story about that. The the myself and other reporters and photographers were at a press conference several blocks away at a church where the church uh, manager or superintendent was shot and killed in front of the church by a man who was homeless and was looking for more than what he was giving him. And he killed him. They had a big press conference there. Um, at the time, Eric Adams was the borough president. He was there. A lot of politicians were there. Decrying what had happened. We're going to get on this. As soon as it ended, I turned my radio on and I'm hearing shots fired. Person shot. Um, I think it was street was it? I can't think of it now. But I ran there. I jumped in my car and I got there, and he was still inside the store, and and I just waited for him to come out. And I took a bunch of pictures, and we used it. We used it strongly. We used it on the cover of AM New York. But it was just so ironic. Here I was at this church where they were preaching nonviolence, and what minutes later, somebody else is shot.
Yeah. My God. Well, it's a beautiful, as weird as it is to say, it's a beautiful shot capturing that moment. At the same time, I'm also seeing some of your I think these must be your COVID shots because these are people who are in protective gear and what looks like, oh God, a body bag. And again, what draws me to these pictures is, do you at all feel like you get the emotion of those moments? Like, does that get on you at all, or are you able to keep sort of a firewall between your work and because this is God, these all of this is like emotionally charged moments.
For me, it's about capturing that moment and doing my job and understanding that the job is very important and to keep my head in the game. Uh, Maybe later I'll feel something, but mm, I write the story, I do the pictures, I even do some video. I did plenty of that for AM. Um, yeah, it was a tough time during COVID. I was one of the first people to get COVID. I was in a synagogue in the World Lubavitch Center in Crown Heights, and I was photographing Purim, which is a Jewish holiday, and I was in there, and I was with a lot of the Orthodox, and nobody was protecting themselves. Nobody was wearing a mask, and and it was a great event. Not days later was I sick, and I had COVID. Um, I knew it. I knew symptoms. Um, I was sick on a Friday. I didn't sleep very well. Uh, into the next day, I got up about 11, 12 o'clock, went outside, popped open a Corona, and I chopped some wood. And I wasn't sick anymore. At least I didn't feel sick. And that's kind of lucky for me because a lot of people died. A good percentage of the people who were in that synagogue died.
Oh
And,
God.
and they ended up closing the synagogue, which never happens, never. Well, the Lubavitch Center, you're going to close it? Well, when you lose your top rabbis, they're closing it. They're closing it. So it was a tough time, COVID. I did a lot of work from home. We didn't go into, they closed our office. We, but we kept working. I
Oh
didn't
yeah.
stop working. I was out there. I would go out there after my quarantine, of course. I got tested and I was COVID positive. Um, it's funny because by the time I got tested, I didn't feel sick anymore. I didn't have anything going on.
Well,
But
you had the corona.
I had the corona. That's right. Well, there's the cure. Nobody even figured that out. You know, it's coronavirus. Well, how do you deal with that? You can have a beer. It's funny. It's funny, but so many people died, and we watched them coming out of the hospital into refrigerated trucks, and it was one after the other, and they were and to this day, I can't understand why some people didn't treat it as serious. That they didn't understand that people were dying. I mean, a lot of people died.
Let me ask you this, because with these stories that you're talking about, I mean, just the simple fact that you knew so many of the firefighters who died on 9/11 and probably also the cops because you're there with them while they're working. Do you consider yourself a first responder?
Yes, I absolutely do. Um, do I think of it now? It's a little harder to be a first responder. There were times where I would show up before them, where I would show up on jobs and there'd be somebody armed with a knife or something, and I was and I would be very careful about showing up on it. I would in one case I actually saw the robbery suspect hiding in a basement alcove, and I called the cops. I said, "Come to this address. My car is right in front. When you come, I'll point them out to you." And sure enough, they show up and they go right over to him, and he comes running out He tries to run away, his pants fall down, and it was a great
Wow.
picture.
Wow.
So, look, I've been very close with the cops and the firefighters for most of my career. There, when I was younger in the '80s, and I worked for the Bay News at the time, the local paper. The cops would invite me in. I'd go up to their office, and they'd break out a bottle of whiskey, and we'd drink and have a drink, and it was friendly. And they would show me the files, and they would share with me a lot of stuff that a lot of people weren't privy to. In the '90s, I was the managing editor of a paper called Town and Village. I would go into the precinct like I owned the place. And I would go up to the office, to the file room, and I would go into the files, and I would take files out and get the stories from the day before. And they trusted me. And people trusted me in the NYPD. And I depended on that because I would get in trouble. There were times when I needed cops or firefighters to bail me out of trouble because I would push the envelope. I would go up on rooftops, which to me, why is that illegal? It's not. But there was a time when they tried to stop us until we threatened to sue them. They won't let us use a drone, but oh, you can't go in the building. What do you mean I can't go in the building? They let me in. So I mean, what is this? Now they're not our friends anymore. I don't understand this. So they're encrypting their radios so that we can't know what they're doing. So people are going to show up on jobs and have
Oh,
no idea what's going on. It's very dangerous.
Todd, you bring up
wow.
the issue of trust, which is so interesting too, because I think, you know, as we said before, there's been this distrust with the media. Um, the past, 10 years or so, it feels like it's definitely built up, although it's been going on for a while, but it's gotten worse. Um, I'm curious though about photography, like when you go online with AI being part of how it's sort of exploded over the past few years. You have lots of questions of what's authentic online, what's real. You have, our newsrooms, are they using AI in their photographs? Kind of like what's your feeling about that technology in the newsroom with photojournalism? What's your feeling about it also about how it's being used online to kind of uh, I guess perpetuate misinformation also in terms of photography. People don't even know what's real anymore.
Yeah, well, publications have used photo manipulation for a long time. Even before AI, but they would call it a photo illustration, and I would hope and I believe that they continue to do that. That if they make something on Trump or Harris, that they say in the paper or wherever the publication is, yes, we created this. It's not a real photo. Um, you wouldn't see that in New York Times, by the way. Yeah, they
Hmm.
won't. They will never manipulate a photo. It just doesn't happen that way, and that makes them more trusted. And I think that's important that media outlets, be trusted, because if you're not trusted, then there's suspicion, and so people have to decide what is their media outlet that they're going to follow and trust. And look, there are times when photographers have gotten a lot of trouble for doing that over the years. There was one photographer in Iraq that I knew of who manipulated his image because there was something in it he didn't like. It was distracting. So what did he do? He went into Photoshop and he eliminated it. Got fired. That's has to
And
be.
oh,
Has
I
to
was gonna be like, and as he should.
He got fired, and that's what's got to happen. If a photographer does something like that on their own and not doesn't say anything that it's manipulated, it's just not right. You can't start changing the photo just because you don't like there's something in it. No, no, and because it's a slippery slope.
I would agree. I would completely agree. I'm wondering now, given, everything that's happening with the business, the contraction of the journalism industry, let's put it that way. I won't say crumbling, that sounds catastrophic, but the contraction, what are your concerns, I guess, or do you have any concerns for young photogs coming into the business or people who have been working and doing the job and have been laid off and cannot figure out how to get back on their feet doing this work that you have to have passion to do.
The people who are really good at it are working for the wires. They're working for the New York Times, the Post. Uh, yeah, there's been contraction. Look at the Daily News is turned into what? I don't even know anymore. I they decided to use freelancers. Yeah, okay, they're working for one third the money that I was working for there. They
Mhm.
get no benefits. They have no protection. There's no workers' comp. If you get, God knows, I wouldn't work for anybody that wasn't offering me workers' comp. I've been injured on a job, so I know what happens when you get hurt and you don't have workers' comp. You're paying through the nose for hospitalization, and then you're out. I was at a shooting once, and I stepped out of my car, and I ruptured my Achilles, and I shot the job anyways. By the way, I shot it. I got the pictures. I hopped around. I made the pictures, and I went to the hospital. And they said, "You ruptured your Achilles. You can't. Yeah, you're going to need surgery." God forbid I was a freelancer. I would be in a lot of trouble. Even if I was paying for my own medical, there's always the deductible, and you're going to pay. Workers' comp, you pay zero. And then they brought me back to work and they put me on a desk, and I was able to continue to work. And they made preparation for me to be able to work, and that was great. Uh, but a lot of the people now are working as freelancers, and they face a lot of challenge unless you're making enough money per day. And some people are just not making enough money for that to be even worth it. Um, that again, the publications, especially I worked for AM New York in my last 2 years
Uh-huh.
that I was full time. And okay, I didn't get medical. I was getting it for my wife, thank God. Uh, so I didn't have to worry about it. But I also knew that I would, if I got hurt on a job, I'd have workers' comp, and I was protected. And if I got into legal trouble, I was protected. You can be a freelancer and write a story for a publication and get sued. I got threatened with a lawsuit a couple months ago from a 2018 photo that I took in Staten Island of a woman who was shot on the street. I was right there, and her family was there. And I got pictures of them crying, and I got pictures of her being taken away. They sued me. Now, they had no grounds for suit, but if I had to get an attorney, I would be in trouble. The Daily News had to protect me for that because I was staff.
Mm.
So
Um,
it went away. It went away because they had no grounds. But what I do, I went on Twitter and I went back in the history and I deleted the photos that I had posted. So that not only was the Daily News taking it away, but I took it away from social media. And that's probably where they saw it because it came up from 2018. The family must have looked it up and saw the pictures and were horrified. Um, but that's what the photos were important because we just can't accept that people are shooting each other on the street. And it's not enough just to have a picture of yellow tape and a cop standing there because it doesn't give the public the feeling of what really happened there. And it's just unacceptable. It's the same thing with watching what goes on in Gaza and Lebanon and Israel. Uh, to see the horror. It's important that we see it so that we don't allow it to be an acceptable thing.
Wow. Well, Todd, thank you so much for this. And we always ask everyone, the last question we ask everybody is, what led you to become a photojournalist?
Okay. I was a writer in high school. I wasn't a very good student, so I went to a community college first. Then I went to NYU. But at both colleges, I became an editor at at Scepter, which is Kingsborough, and then at NYU, it was the New York Torch, and I became the photo editor. Why? Well, back in Kingsborough, I picked up a camera and I was doing. I was just dabbling at the time, but I was a writer, and I went out and I shot pictures at a concert, and I was front row, and it was Johnny and Edgar Winter, and it was an amazing concert. And I took pictures. I gave the film to my photo editor at the time at Kingsborough, and he developed it in Fixer instead of using the developer. All blank. And I said, "You're never touching my film again." I did it myself from then on. And it made me want to shoot more pictures. And I developed into a very good photographer. Uh, Not a great photographer, by the way. I was not a great photographer to start out. NYU, I became the photo editor, and I was essentially it. And during NYU, it was my first time that I went to the Daily News with a job. It was 1982, and no, it was eight. Yeah, it was 82, and it was an explosion, transformer explosion on 14th Street, knocked out all the power in Manhattan. Um, Everything was in chaos. The lights were out, and so I ran all the way to 14th Street on foot from my office, my NYU office on 11th Street and Broadway. I ran all the way down to Avenue D. A big long run, but I was in great shape, so it was okay. I got there and I didn't have a press card because I wasn't pressed yet. I wasn't uh, certified for that, and they wouldn't let me in where the press were. What did I do? I went around the corner, got through a fence, climbed the coal chute. There's a tower there that's right next to the FDR Drive. I climbed up about 30, 40 feet, crossed the coal chute into the plant, put on a Con Ed helmet that I found right away. And I went right over to the other side of the plant and I photographed the transformer on fire. And so I came down, straight down, right to the line where the press were. And I met a Daily News photographer, Willie Anderson, uh, one of the first Daily News photographers I've ever met. And I told him what I had, and he says, "Oh, that's great. Why don't you take my film in too?" And I said, "Okay." Now, how was I getting there? I ran from 14th Street and Avenue C or D, and I ran all the way to 42nd Street. That's when they had the office in the Daily Planet, as we call it. And and it was my first time in the Daily News, and I was sweating, and I ran it. I really just ran it, and they developed my film, and we looked at it, and he says, "Great job, kid." Gives me a roll of film, and the next day they didn't use any of my pictures. I
Oh.
got a check in the mail for $5.
But anything for the picture.
I used the picture on the cover of the NYU paper. So the pictures did not go to waste. I didn't get paid for them other than the $5 though.
That is quite a story, Todd, but I feel like that's one of many amazing stories that you've gotten. In addition to the stories that you're photographs tell, which again are beautiful.
You
And
can read it in
incredibly
my book.
moving. Yes, you've got a book coming out, and we look forward to
I'm
that.
working on it, and I've got a lot finished. And the title of the book is Confessions of an Outlaw News Photographer.
Love it.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love
So
it.
when that's out, you'll understand why I call myself an outlaw.
We look forward to seeing that book when it comes out. So please
Yeah.
definitely let us know.
Working on it. I am going to finish this thing. I've been working on it for years now.
All right. Well, listen.
It's all so fresh in my mind. So it's great that I'm able to put it into words.
Definitely. Thank you so much for taking the time to
Thanks,
share
Todd.
with us amazing stories. And yeah, we look forward to the book. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anytime.
Laid Off and Looking is an independent podcast conceived of and created by Jenna Flanagan and Dominic Camia. Music provided by Jay Cowett, research by Lori Ruthenbucker. Reach out to us anytime at laidofandlookingpod@gmail.com. New episodes drop every Friday at noon.